Resident Evil 2.
In Resident Evil 2, you play as Claire Redfield and Leon Kennedy as they're caught up in a zombie outbreak in Raccoon City. As you progress, you find that the reason for the outbreak goes much deeper and has super secret connections to the local police department. The actual gameplay components in Resident Evil 2 are very basic. You're tasked with traversing through Raccoon City Police Station's fixed camera angles. The tank controls are absolutely necessary because of them. This allows you to maintain a forward direction quickly while the camera angles continually change. The rest of the game is running around the area solving puzzles. The puzzles either require a lot of runaround for items or simply completing a puzzle with the solution provided to you. These solutions are almost always in the same room as the puzzle itself, so it feels more like busy work than some cleverly designed and involved puzzle. Combat is pretty basic. You get a few unique guns with each character. There are only a handful of enemy types in Resident Evil 2. Most of them are damage sponges and require heavy ammunition investment. There are standard zombies, which are by far and wide the most plentiful. Lickers, which are much more threatening and aggressive and initially appear infrequently but show up more and more towards the end of the game. Then there are a handful of area-specific enemies, notably dogs, giant spiders, and plant monsters. Enemies don't respawn except under very specific circumstances, so if you take some shots at enemies to stun them or knock them over, you should commit to killing them. The original Resident Evil was one of the first games to be fully voiced, and Resident Evil 2 continues that trend. The voice acting is decent, but is often accompanied by clumsy character animations which combine to form the Voltron of laughable delivery.
What was that all about? Running off like that was reckless and stupid.
The audio levels at times can be poorly balanced. Without the option of subtitles, it can be hard to hear the dialogue at certain points where the background noise is simply too loud.
Don't move. You're the one who's with that cop, if I'm not mistaken. Identify yourself.
There are a few nice touches between Scenario A and Scenario B. Some choices in Scenario A can adjust things in Scenario B. If you choose to burn all the plants in Scenario A using the facility's built-in systems, they'll be back more powerful in Scenario B. Scenario B also introduces Mr. X. He has a tendency to burst in at the most inopportune times. He's not hard to take down for the most part, but he does have an intimidating presence that instills fear. There are some genuinely good jump scares in Resident Evil 2. They are restrained and not used in excess, which is exactly how good jump scares need to be. Resident Evil 2's jump scares are infrequent, which lowers your guard, increasing their potency when they do occur. The story of Resident Evil 2 is acceptable. Leon and Claire don't get much characterization besides being generic good guys who are trying to save everyone and escape from this horrible situation, but everyone else is making it as hard as possible for them.
Follow us later.
Claire! Claire! Wait! Man, why doesn't anyone ever listen to me?
The Leon and Ada in love subplot comes completely out of the blue and feels laughable as a result.
I'm just a woman who fell in love with you. Nothing more.
The hardest part in Resident Evil 2 is getting used to the controls. There is a definite learning curve and it can feel clunky. In the beginning, it's very easy to be killed because you clumsily ran into a zombie or got stuck while trying to run past something larger. Part of the problem is the fixed camera angles. It's likely after you turn a blind corner or hit a camera transition that a zombie can grab you, but after a full playthrough and entering Scenario B, you'll be zigzagging around zombies and lickers like a pro. The enemies do seem faster and more aggressive on Scenario B, which did feel like appropriate ramp up for a secondary playthrough. There are elements of scavenging and ammo preservation, but it's not a huge issue. You do get a lot of ammo, but it feels like you get ammo in abundance and then go through a long drought. There are points when you're desperate for any kind of ammo pickup and it just never comes. This can be alleviated by being selective with what enemies you kill and which ones you avoid. Unfortunately, there's no realistic way to know which enemies are higher priority. Enemies in certain rooms or hallways that you're frequently backtracking through should be a higher priority. This is not a problem in repeat playthroughs, but blind, you can find yourself starved for ammo because of unintentionally bad choices. Scenario A, playing as Claire, ammo was a massive issue, but in Scenario B with Leon, there was no shortage. Part of that is that Claire's arsenal is just weaker than Leon's. Claire's handgun is weaker. The bowgun is terrible, especially when directly compared to Leon's shotgun, which blows off zombies' torsos. Claire's grenade launcher is strong, but even with the strongest acid and fire rounds, it pales in comparison to Leon's magnum. Even some of the more fun guns like the Spark Shot are weak except against certain enemy types. Claire should be considered the more difficult character. This includes the sections where you play as the secondary characters. Leon has Ada, who at least has a gun. Claire gets Sherry, who is completely defenseless. A lot of the boss fights can be beaten by simply standing your ground. Trying to be clever and dodge is often a good way to get killed. Certain guns can and will stunlock bosses, so simply standing there firing your most powerful weapon seems to be a totally reasonable solution against most bosses. While ammo preservation is an issue, you shouldn't be too stingy with using your strongest weapons. In Leon's scenario B, with the submachine gun and an extra magazine, there were points where having 4 magazines worth of magnum ammo was not uncommon. Claire's arsenal is weaker in general. It's recommended to give her the optional submachine gun regardless of scenario A or B. Claire's scenario A was completed in 4 hours, 25 minutes, and 45 seconds. Leon's scenario B was completed in 3 hours, 45 minutes, and 36 seconds. Both playthroughs totaling 8 hours, 10 minutes, and 47 seconds. Resident Evil 2 has a lot of content. If you wanted to maximize your time with Resident Evil 2, you have at least scenarios A and B with both Claire and Leon, and 1 extra mini scenario which must be unlocked with high rankings across your playthroughs. The main issue is that anything past a Leon A, Claire B, or Claire A, Leon B has a huge amount of recycled content. Even a full Scenario A and B playthrough has a lot of repetition, with the most notable additions to Scenario B being Mr. X and a more robust final area. Scenario B plays like an arrange mode where you're going through the same areas as in Scenario A, but you need to do things in a slightly different way with only a handful of new areas. Most of the puzzles are relatively simple, bring item X to location Y, but the inventory system can make things significantly more difficult. Your inventory is so limited that if you need to pick up a key item but you're at full inventory, you're forced to backtrack to an item box and clear it out. This can lead to some really annoying moments where you're being diligent and picking up anything useful you find only to come across a key item that you can no longer pick up because your inventory is full. Another situation that arises is that you won't know you need something until you get there, only for you to have to backtrack to take it out of the item box and then return. Those situations are largely alleviated on secondary playthroughs, but a blind first playthrough can lead to some frustrating moments. The optional side pack can help to alleviate some of this strain as it provides 1 character 2 extra inventory slots. Scenario B is harder, so it's recommended to save it for that playthrough. Once you're familiar with the game, replays will play out much faster as you have a fundamental understanding of the order of events required to progress. Resident Evil 2 is a good game that has some off-putting features. The initial learning curve of the tank controls will be difficult for new players, but through the course of the game, you will gain proficiency at using them. If you're not meticulous in searching the environment for ammo and being conservative with its use, it's likely you can end up in difficult situations where reverting to an old save may be one of your more viable options. The basic fetch quest style of puzzles can be annoying to deal with because of its severely limited inventory system. These are issues that veterans of the series take for granted and forget because of intimate familiarity with the game, but are important for newcomers to understand. The horror elements are fun, and Resident Evil 2 has some genuinely good jump scares which it uses with restraint. There is a good balance of seriousness and maybe unintentional campiness that makes for a memorable experience. Resident Evil 2 gets recommended playing's most prestigious verdict of recommended.